Very good evening to you and welcome to Face the Nation right here on TV1, Monday at 9:30 p.m. Now, it took the Committee on Public Enterprises, or COPE, to issue their report 18 months after the controversial bond issue took place, the 27th of February 2015. News First, together with Face the Nation and many other programs on News First, which was telecast on Citizen TV and TV1, said that the governor of the central bank should be held responsible even 2 weeks before the bond scam really took place. We said on the 7th of March that the governor of the central bank, Arjun Mahendran, should be held responsible. We interviewed the governor of the central bank on the same month and again revealed to the public and as well as the state that the governor of the central bank accepted that he made a mistake when the first bond transaction took place. We were in the limelight. We brought the story out first. This is News First, and we are ready to tell you what will happen next. Tonight on the show, I want to do things differently. I want to introduce our journalists, a few of the journalists at News First who worked tirelessly to bring to light what took place in the central bank bond issue. Let me introduce them to you. On to my far left is Faraz Shaukat Ali, investigative journalist as well as a host of our Newsline program in the morning. Let's start off with Faraz to get his thoughts on what he thinks about the controversial bond transaction. Faraz, 18 months ago we said there was something wrong. The COPE took nearly 18 months to conclude their investigations. How do you view the conclusion of the COPE report that was out just a few days ago?
Well, obviously it's been a long, hard, arduous road that we've traversed on. We've been much subjected to ridicule and so on and so forth, but we've stuck it out, and it's finally out. But it's interesting to note that whilst we have been maintaining a same policy without any change, it's sad to note that in certain matters like on the VAT, for example, and on benefits, our parliamentarians, our legislators are all together as one. But when it comes to COPE, we find that it's split along party lines, along party colours. And it's astonishing that the people can be so let down so much by the very people whom we voted to represent our interests. And it's also critical to appreciate that our network has been absolutely consistent. Not a day goes by without that magic word coming out in some fora, the bond. It is almost a joke, but it's a serious business. And today, finally, in this last week, we've seen some semblance of sanity prevail, and this report is out. But it's very sad that the parliamentarians cannot be together on this issue. But when it comes to their benefits, they're all together.
Absolutely, Faraz. When it comes to the issue of that, everyone is together to put a burden on your shoulder at home. Increased from 11 to 15%, Faraz, very quickly, 11 to 15%, the VAT was imposed. The parliamentarians were together. Their benefits, their schemes, increasing their salaries, everyone is together. But when it comes to an issue like the bond transaction, which affects you at home, everyone is split. Let me also introduce you this evening, Chaturang Haporachi joining us again on our show. On to my immediate left is attorney at law Sonali Waningabadiku joining us this evening on the show as well. And on to my immediate right is Nadeem Majid, who is also joining us on the show tonight. Let me introduce you, our panelist this evening, Mr. Rusripala Tennakon. A very good evening to you and welcome to the show. Since March last year, you've been in the spotlight as well. You've got several letters of demand over the last few months as well, over the bond transaction and many other issues that you brought to light. Thank you very much for joining us this evening as well. Took the determination and courage to be on the show. Nice to have you on board as well, Mr. Rusripala Tennakon. Also joining us this evening is Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Last year when I spoke to the Deputy Governor for the first time, I asked him What is wrong at the central bank? He told me, Shamir, look no further. Just look at the John Exter's report. He said that if the governor's integrity is questioned, he should go home. And the governor went home this year in August. All joining us this evening is Attorney at Law Mr. Krishmal Varanasuriya, Joint Secretary of the People's Intellectual Association, has been very vocal on the bond scam as well. All joining us this evening is Mr. Kirti Tennakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Looking forward to be grilling you as well on the bond scam today. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us very bravely and very courageously for the cause to ensure that the justice prevails in the country. Let's start off tonight's show with Mr. Risiripala Tennakon, who's a senior banker as well as a public interest activist. Mr. Tennakon, I don't want to put the past away. I don't want to not discuss about the past, because everything transpired just a few weeks after the 8th of January polls in Sri Lanka, which is known as somewhat of a transformation in the country. Let's revisit. Let's see what exactly happened. Tell us, the bond scam, how did it all start? And where do you stand today on this? Your time starts now.
Yes. I think it's a good thing to start from the beginning, because we are now at a stage of recapping what we have been talking about, what we have heard, and what the outcome that all were expecting. I think from the 8th of January was a historic day for this country. Every citizen, without any reservation, expected the change that came about to bring the results and to fulfill their expectations, especially with regard to good governance. This was the key word. So with the January 8th, there was a pronouncement about the constitutional change that was much expected in the country. We thought that with the support that the government had from the opposition, as well as all the groups in the parliament, to bring about that constitutional change. Unfortunately, the constitutional change was limited to certain areas only. And I see in retrospect that is one instance where we completely gave up the opportunity that we had to bring about a very big change that was wanted by the country. Stage one. If that happened, the mere the constitutional change for the sake of bringing a small change, the major change that happened was that the presidential election or president cannot go for three terms. That was one of the major things. And besides that, the other changes were very nominal. The president cannot dissolve the parliament for 4 years, and the constitutional bodies that were set up under the constitution of the country to take effect. That was the other important change. Now we thought the constitutional bodies will incorporate the most important positions in the country to be determined and to be fixed by the constitutional bodies. Attorney General, the Auditor General, all that was done. But I see another omission there. The Governor of the Central Bank, another very key position, he should have been brought into this network and then brought under the constitutional arrangement for the constitutional body to appoint such an important person. That did not happen. Then we saw the cabinet portfolios, the distribution of functions among the ministers. We saw some unprecedented things happening in that area too. We saw the finance ministry being broken into small cells, and the most important vital positions of the finance ministry being taken away into other ministries. Central bank, all these while, from the time of independence, we had the central bank as a body functioning under the Ministry of Finance. With this change, it came under the Prime Minister, under a completely different ministry, away from the Finance Ministry. That was another notable thing that happened, which subsequently led to certain questionable acts in the in the events that we saw.
Mr. Nakon, do you think that the job is done following the announcement, the publishing of the COPE report in question? Do you think that the job is now done?
I have, looking at the events that we have seen and witnessed, looking at the obstacles that was faced in this whole episode, I have my doubts whether a serious outcome can be expected from the COPE report.
Thank you very much. That, of course, was Mr. Risripal Thanakon, who is also a senior banker and also public interest activist. I now move my attention to Dr. W. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Dr. Wijewardena, it took COPE 18 months to conclude that the former governor of the Central Bank was responsible for the bond transaction that took place on the 27th of February 2015. Now, given your experience and what you've been expressing, the sentiments that you've been expressing on the very show, Face the Nation, as well as on Newsline hosted by Faraz in the mornings, you said that the governor of the Central Bank should be held responsible. Not even a crow can fly over the Central Bank of Sri Lanka without the governor knowing, literally. Why did COPE take such a long time?
Well, of course, Shamir, the present COPE didn't take 18 months to come up with its report because it started its investigation sometime in September last year. So within a matter of about, say, 12 months time, the present COPE has come up with its recommendation. But what matters to us is the particular provision in the Monetary Law Act under which the Central Bank is operating. Under section 21 of the Monetary Law Act, governor actually operates on a delegated authority basis from the Monetary Board, which owns the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And governor can delegate his authority to other officials of the Central Bank. And whatever the good thing or bad thing being done by these other officers, in terms of section 21 of the Monetary Law Act, governor is responsible for every act. So in that sense, if any particular officer or team of officers who have been delegated authority by the governor had acted in an improper manner, the responsibility should be taken by the governor of the Central Bank. That is the statutory provision. But of course, if you look at the central banking practices in other countries, immediately after a central bank governor is questioned by maybe the politicians or civil society or other stakeholders, he takes the full responsibility, he resigns. One good example is the Governor R.T. Rahman of Bangladesh Bank, where there was a hacker who had penetrated the computer system and he had got some 100 million US dollars credited to his own account out of the reserves of the Bangladesh Bank. In fact, the people who are responsible are the people who had worked in the particular department. But when the matter came to light, the Governor R.T. Rahman immediately resigned and he just took the responsibility. Then another example is this Governor Raghuram Rajan of Reserve Bank of India. He was questioned by one of the government party politicians about his loyalty to India. He immediately said, earlier he had expressed his willingness to serve another term, but of course he said, no, I am not willing to be reappointed, and he just withdrew his application. So this is the position being held by the governor of a central bank, because governor's position is a sacred position. And if that position is comes under public scrutiny, public debate, public criticism, a governor should not hold that position, because he is doing some disservice to the country as well as to the people who have appointed him by holding on to the power. So this is where I said that even a crow cannot fly over central bank without the governor's knowledge, and therefore if something improper thing has happened in the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, it is the governor who should be eventually responsible. But of course, I will assign the responsibility to the Monetary Board also, because governor acts on the delegated authority from the Monetary Board. So if the Monetary Board has not taken action against the governor, then of course Monetary Board is also held responsible from here.
Dr. Vijayawardena, now when the COPE report was out, there were many discussions saying there are certain sections that have approved the footnotes. There are certain sections who have not approved the footnotes. And there is another individual who is a UNP MP, Ranjan Ramanayaka, saying, no, I was not in the country, so I'm not going to even sign the document in question. Now, is it one report or is there several reports?
Well, of course, it's a one
to it?
report, Samir, because the COPE cannot submit two reports, number one, theoretically. But of course, the two report concept came out because the chairman of COPE, parliamentarian Mr. Sunil Handunetti, he announced in parliament that the report has to be read by people as two reports, one with footnotes, another one without footnotes. But when I went through the footnotes, Samir, what I found was the footnotes have not done any damage to the main report that had been signed by 16 members of parliament, members of COPE. Because some of the footnotes have actually clarified position taken in the main report. Some other footnotes have given alternative views where they have said further examination should be conducted. A third type of footnotes have even recommended stronger recommendations than the recommendation that you find in the main report. And fourth,
So where are those recommendations in question?
those recommendations are there in the footnote number 33, which has actually given wholesale very strong recommendations that the government will have to implement, and I hope the government will implement those recommendations.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Before moving on to Mr. Kirtan Nakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election, I want to move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon again. Beg your pardon. Mr. Thennakoon, many say that the report in question is diluted, a diluted version, because I'll tell you why. Because on the 8th of July 2016, News First reported taking bits and pieces from the Island newspaper, which says that a group of central bank officials informed the Committee on Public Enterprises that Central Bank Governor Arjuna Mahendran had claimed he acted on the instructions of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe with regard to the controversial bond issue. However, the COPE report does not indicate any of this. Why is that?
Yes, I think I'm holding a different view to that of Dr. Vijayawardena on this matter. That that he stated that these footnotes or something called footnotes we are hearing for the first time. I thought we were aware of practices like dissenting notes or something like that, dissenting views. But this is a new thing, a footnote, whatever it is, whatever you call it. I think they have been deliberately included into this report to dilute its effect. I say this with, I think in the course of our discussion we can meet those arguments, we can point out exactly what has happened. I'll just cite one thing here. In one of the footnotes, they say that the Auditor General has based his observations based on limited information that he was given or he had access to. What does it mean? Take the finality. This report, or in this report, whatever the Auditor General has stated is wanting in something. So when a certain future body examines this report in that perspective, they will find that what the Auditor General has said, it has been told with less information or not being properly informed. Therefore, to that extent, this report has been, these footnotes have been added with the deliberate intention of diluting it for future safety of their interests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon. I now move my attention to Mr. Kirtan Nakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Thennakoon, this is not why the people of Sri Lanka went to the polling booth on the 8th of January and elected a new president. This is not why the people of Sri Lanka went on the 17th of August last year and voted in a coalition government. You have certain UNP parliamentarians, example to that of Mrs. Sujiva Senasinghe, who issued a book saying that the central bank bond transaction is all good. It's all clear. He made statements on social media websites like Facebook and said this is okay. There is no problem with regard to the central bank bond issue. However, now he's saying that we should open the doors for media to come and listen to the COPE report when the submissions are taken in. They have to know what exactly is going on. You have people saying that as well. In the same time, when he makes a statement saying that the COPE report is fine, nothing is wrong with it, with regard to the central bank bond transaction that took place on the 27th of February last year. How do you view these statements and what has transpired over the last 18 months in Sri Lanka?
It took so much of time, 18 months in numbers, when this first bond issue came into light, and then we were discussing this issue for almost 13 months now after the election. And one thing, the general perception is as such now, everyone knows that there's something really wrong, something cannot be forgotten, something which is not transparent, but something which is not according to the law of the land is happened here in Sri Lanka. When we start talking about this 18 months ago, everyone has a doubt what is exactly happened. Is the central bank governor, the public officer, is really responsible for that? And in the other hand, who are the politicians, who are the people had a very specific motivation to have this sort of a thing? I think when it comes to the general perception, now everyone believes that there's something very serious has happened in related to this. There's a scam, there's an issue, the law of the land has violated, and there must be an investigation. And that basic foundation, the basic ceiling has taken up, has done with the COPE report. The challenge here, according to the mandate which was given to this government, the Yahapalana government on January 8, is that we should have a proper investigation doing with the entities, entitled entities for that matter, and take the people responsible into the courts. So this won't come simply. We were having a very big struggle. And we were campaigning, we were having talk shows, we were having press conferences, we were having protests, and even we went to the courts on this. And that's how we prevented the Arjuna Mahendran becoming, getting extension for that matter some time ago. Now, it's the whole responsibility of the believing people who worked for the January 8th revolution, in a sense. Now they have to act, and without doing such a thing, I don't think the things will be coming very easily as what we expect. In the other hand, I think, we have to agree with Mr. Usripara very much. This was a very deliberate diluting when it comes to the COPE report. As you very correctly said, people like Sujiva Senasinghe, who try to cover it up in a very big way with a very big purposes, and they have done their homework to cover it up. But finally they have to agree on common base that there something has happened very seriously, which now everyone agrees. In the other hand, they did it very systematically to dilute, make a very big noise, making too much of noises to make the situation much complex. I think this is the area we have to work out during the next 3-4 months if we are going for a really transparent investigation and try to get the law of the land work against the culprits.
Now, Mr. Thannakoon, certain central bank officials, I pose this question to Mr. Thannakoon as well, certain central bank officials had informed the Committee on Public Enterprises that the central bank governor, Arjuna Mahendran, had claimed he acted on the instructions of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Yes.
However, this clause or this statement is not visible on the COPE report per se. Why is that?
I think there's an issue in related to this particular statement. The former MP, Mr. Gunasekar, said after releasing of the COP report that he was told when the inquiry was taken, the Archana Mahendra said this particular sentence saying that I was instructed by the PM. And I think this is the area we have to work with the investigators. We should know, and everyone should know, the fact that the Bribery and Corruption Commission had a very thorough investigation on this bond scam. I think that is one of the most comprehensive investigations which has taken place in related to the bond scam. Now, we know that it has reached to some extent. We know, one thing we don't know what happened at the end. It was going very fine, but at the very end of that particular investigation, something very seriously happened, and we have to reopen that investigation, and I think that will open the new doors to address your particular question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirtan Nakun. I now move my attention to Mr. Krishmal Varanasuria, Attorney at Law, as well as the Joint Secretary of the People's Intellectual Association.
Assembly.
People's Intellectual Assembly, that's right, Mr. Varanasuria, sorry for making a mistake there. Attorney at Law, Mr. Varanasuria, what is next? Now we have the COPE report, we have the findings of the COPE report. What is next? Will this COPE report also be swept under the carpet? What is next?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Shamir, because it appears that we've been doing a lot of investigations. Lots of things have been thrown in front of the people, but as to what happens next is the most important question. Firstly, what I'd like to tell the public that are watching this is, don't let this COPE report on one particular issue of public enterprise be the long and short of it and the be all and end all, because this can be used by politicians as a magician, as I always say, as a magician waves a wand to conjure up things, hide several other things. Remember, COPE investigated several other things in addition to the central bank. So let's not lose track of that. Let's also not lose track of present issues like VAT, like the budget, all of which politicians can very nicely hide behind COPE and talk about COPE for the next 2 years. So let's be careful not to do that. Now, on this particular report, Shamir, COPE has a problem. It has no teeth. They have the old single ad, alluwata hapanna puluwan. They can recommend, just like the Human Rights Commission. It's a flaw in our law. You can't go beyond recommending. Now we have to, as we have to find an answer to it in the law. But until that's amended, we are stuck with these recommendations. Now, if you look at it from a sovereign point of view, the legislative power of the people has now done its duty. You see, COPE is an extension of our legislative power, which is exercised by Parliament. Now, they have investigated into public expenditure and given recommendation. Now, the other two powers of our sovereignty, the executive power and the judicial power, needs to kick in, right? So, how does the executive act? Executive acts through agencies. The police or the CID or the FCI, so executive can now give directions to do this. Then the judicial arm, the Honorable Attorney General, the Chief Law Officer of the state, the court system, now they need to, now that's how sovereignty works, that's how democracy is supposed to work. So now legislature has found certain things and given us, now we need to work those out. As to how it's going to happen is something that we'll possibly explore over our discussion tonight. But let's also, my two good friends on my right hand side, both of them said some important things about the report itself. Whilst I agree with Dr. Wijayawardena that some of the footnotes appear to actually go further, thus causing me a question as to how the report itself, the body of the report, was so diluted, but the footnote is stronger. Similarly, we can go into the details later, particularly as Rusiri said on the Auditor General's findings. Rusiri, they've gone further than just saying he didn't have information. I just read one footnote in the copious report, we need time to go through it. One footnote says that the Auditor General has made a fraudulent statement. Now, Auditor General is Savadya. I have the singular copy. Savadya is incorrect. So, when in a report you find that the Auditor General has given certain recommendations and a footnote says this is incorrect, how do you rely on the footnote for evidence? You follow? So now we are going to have a serious question. If and when this traverses the executive and judicial branches of government, as I said, in an inquisitorial process or even a prosecutorial process, we are going to have serious questions on having this as evidence. But remember, earlier court reports that we used for insurance corporation and all that, there were very, very strong court reports that the Supreme Court or any other court could act upon. But here now, we are going to have lawyers coming from the other side and trying to argue, no, you can't rely on this report because some people say that this is wrong. So we are going to have that problem, and we need to get over that.
Mr. Varanasi, you said something very interesting. You said that the executive and the judicial arm of the government should act now. You said that the executive comprises of the CID and the police.
Head of the executive is president. His Excellency the President is head of the executive.
So why not take action now? Why wait? What's the delay?
Absolutely my question, Shami. That's why I said, let's not get misled. You don't need a vote on the COPE report. COPE reports are never put for a vote in Parliament. You see, you don't need to wait for another vote. That's another 6 months. There's a budget will come. Then we'll talk of VAT. This is just eye-washing the public. COPE has given a report. Never have COPE reports been voted upon in Parliament. It doesn't need a further vote for ratification. There is a report. Now you need to act on it. The executive arm of government headed by His Excellency the President and the judicial arm of government headed by the Supreme Court needs to now take our duties seriously and act on it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varanasi. Time and tide wait for no man, and this is what exactly we did as an organization. News First came to the forefront. We followed the story and broke the story first to you to understand what exactly was going on as far as the bond transaction is concerned. Now it is time for the authorities, the CID, the police, the President who handles the executive, the Prime Minister, the parliamentarians, the Cabinet of Ministers, as well as the opposition in Parliament to unite and ensure those who are really responsible behind the bond transaction, maybe the Governor of the Central Bank or even an unforeseen hand behind the manipulation of this bond transaction, be brought to book. Let's open the floor for questions from our journalists this evening. Let's start off with the lady, Sonali Wanikbadu, attorney at law. Let's start off with her.
Thank you, Sham. My first question is to Mr. Rusiripala. Now, the central bank bond transaction has become rather a ubiquitous term. My question to you is, Mr. Tennakoon, how does this impact the general public? In one word, yes or no?
Yes.
My second question is, can you explain to us how it impacts the farmer in Hambegamua or the woman in Pudukudiripu? How does this central bank bond transaction translate into affecting their lives?
The farmer in Hambegamua and the person from Kudirpu all participated in an election process in this country. Big or small, they had a role to play in that elections. Every single vote counted in making the final decision. They have been part and parcel of that important decision, revolution so-called, that happened in this country. And the thinking behind the entire exercise of franchise at that stage was focused on one main thing: to have a free, good governance in this country. If this farmer and this other person from this remote place get to know through, because of the role that the media is playing, that there has been a fraud amounting to a very big, causing a very big loss to the government, in effect will have another impact on the people's living standards, they will be worried equally. To that extent, they will think, oh, we wanted good governance, but we don't have good governance even under the present setup. That is why it is important. That is the impact the country will have. And if it is not reached the people now sufficiently, it has to happen with the help of the media and with the help of these organizations.
Dr. Wijewardena,
Let me add something to that. I mean, when it comes to the Auditor General's reports, it's very clear that the basic loss, at least the minimum amount of the loss, quantified loss, it's 1.6 billion from the first treasury bond issue, and the profit which the perpetual treasuries has made is 5.2 billion rupees. Sri Lankan rupees. So when you have a very basic
Mr.
calculation,
Pinnacle,
the
it was
way
corrected by Dr. W. Javardhana the last time on the show. The losses go up to, the profits of the company in question goes up to 11.2 billion.
yes, that's
rupees.
that's something I want to highlight. So when you calculate the very basic numbers, at least 20,000 rupees per a person, per a individual, is taken out from their pockets. So that's how it affects to the general public. So there's an issue that each and every person in this country has at least taken 20,000 rupees out of their pockets by doing this particular bond scam. So it affects every life, every single person in this country.
Dr. Vijayawardena, we often in the media and at News First, we often speak about the importance of having a citizenry that is aware and that is knowledgeable. However, when it comes to a transaction like this, which is rather technical in nature, it is difficult to go to the grassroots level, because the grassroots level citizenry is not in a position to understand the technicalities. How do we and how do you as experts suggest or recommend that we go about doing this, as it is our social responsibility?
Well, of course, Sonali, now the same question was asked from me by a very senior politician of the country. The answer I gave him was that if you have an asset which can be traded at 121 rupees, and if you have sold that asset to your own son-in-law for 90 rupees, what do you think of it? What do you think of it? Because immediately after he has bought it for 90 rupees, he has sold it back in the market for a higher price and he had made a profit. So this is the message that has to be given to the citizenry of the country, because otherwise they don't know what is meant by the yield, what is meant by the bond market price, what is meant by the primary auction, what is meant by a direct placement, what is meant by all other things that we are talking about. But the simple thing that has happened is that on that particular day, on the 27th of February 2015, a 30-year bond was traded in the market for 121 rupees. The 100 rupee bond was traded at 121 rupees. The central bank would have sold the bond at that price, and in fact that was the price which the central bank expected the primary dealers to bid at, because they had unofficially informed all the primary dealers, now this is the price that is prevailing for this particular bond, you bid at this price. In fact, the institutions like National Savings Bank, the EPF, they actually submitted their bids around that particular price. But what happened was, within the last 15 minutes time, the bids came at 90 rupees and they all accepted, and as a result a bond that would have been sold at 121 rupees or around that price was sold to someone at 90 rupees.
So who's
That is where we made the mistake.
sorry? So who's responsible for allowing that to happen?
That of course according to the information given in the bond, the particular COP report, as well as the information available in the public domain for us, there's a series of things that has happened in the central bank before that. Now, for example, in the morning of 27th, Governor Mahendran had just stormed into a particular meeting in the central bank headed by one of the deputy governors, who would decide on the day's exchange rate policy of the country.
Is that normal?
It's not normal. It's
Has it
actually
ever
not
happened
normal, and
before?
it should never happen, because it doesn't happen.
That's on the 26th of February 2015.
27th of February, in the morning of that particular, he had said, okay, at that time there was an interest rate structure in the central bank where any commercial bank which had deposited with the central bank its excess money for more than 3 occasions, they were given a penal interest rate of 5%. And he had all of a sudden announced, I want to do away with this penal interest rate.
With your permission, can I add one thing, sir?
Yeah.
With due respect, This decision to change the policy interest rates of this country was in contravening a previous decision taken by the Monetary Board, where this present governor was himself present. On the 23rd of February, the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka met, and they took a decision which is recorded, which says, we are not going to change the policy interest rate for the next 1 month. Next 1 month. On the 27th, that is on the day of the bond, they changed it to 6.5%.
So immediately after that, Farah, the interest rates went up. Then what happened was that, he had visited the public debt department, which is again an abnormal activity.
But he was on national television denying that he did
No,
that.
in fact, the information that had been given in the COP report, as well as what is held by the public domain, says that he visited 2 times.
Yes.
I mean, you can't deny it now.
It is established.
Because of that reason,
And he said this under
you
oath.
have to understand, Faraz, the governor is the CEO of the central bank. When the CEO tells something to a central bank officer, that officer cannot simply ignore it, because he is like a god and you can't ignore it. So even if he says, okay, why don't you accept up to 10 billion, it's an order given by the CEO. So because of this reason, the interest rate, the price at which the bond should be traded, it should have been 121 rupees, they were sold at 90 rupees.
Mr. Tennakoon, quick question to you now. When this whole fiasco was taking place, there was a statement made in Parliament by the Prime Minister on the 17th of March saying that the Prime Minister insisted on going into a public auction rather than a private placement. What is a private placement and a public auction?
I think this was very carefully and adequately explained by Dr. Vijayawardena in previous sessions as well, but I would like to just touch on it. He's an expert.
Very quickly.
He knows what it is. Quickly, the Prime Minister admitted that he instructed the governor of the central bank to do away with the private placements. My question is, when did he give these instructions? In what forum? In what form?
And on what basis?
And yes, and as the minister in charge maybe, but did the governor of the central bank, having got those instructions from the Prime Minister as the minister in charge of the subject, convey that to the Monetary Board of this country? Or did he at least convey it to the PDD, the Public Debts Department, who decides on the public auction system?
Is it constitutional for the Prime Minister to say?
No.
Totally wrong.
No, I mean,
So do you think, Dr. Vijayawardena, that
Monetary Board is an independent organization, Chaturanga. Unlike any other public sector organization, this is the only institution in Sri Lanka where the minister in charge cannot issue a specific or general direction to Monetary Board. And even if he issues that, he has to do it in writing, number one, and he has to say in that direction that the government will take the full responsibility for the consequences of implementing the particular decision. So, Prime Minister cannot do that. It can be done only by the Minister of Finance. Even then, he has to do it in writing. At the same time, he has to say that he will take full responsibility. And in the history of Sri Lanka, on one occasion, this particular section had been used by the government. That was by Mr. Dahanayake when he was Prime Minister in 1959. He said he would take the responsibility. He took the responsibility. In the next election, he even lost his seat in Galle.
So what about the Monetary Law Act then, Dr. Vijayawardena?
Yeah.
What role has that got to play, and is there provision in the Monetary Law Act for the Prime Minister to say anything?
No, Prime Minister can't do that. I mean, no one can do that. I mean, no
So
politician
who has the right to do it?
Nobody. Because the Monetary Board is an independent organization, because far as the central bank and the Monetary Board were created by the nation in order to protect our money, protect our wealth.
So if
Our wealth
Mr.
cannot be protected if it is being influenced by other people outside the central bank.
if the governor was following
No,
the
governor
instructions,
should not accede to. If the particular instruction had been given to him, he should have just ignored it.
so he was acting out of is
He shouldn't have. I don't know whether he has acted on that, but he shouldn't have.
He has not acted in this instance.
Dr. Wijewardena, you said that in 1959, Prime Minister Dhanayake
1959.
took the responsibility,
Yeah.
and then he lost his seat.
Even his seat, yes.
In Galle.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka should resign after this bond transaction?
no, I
took
mean,
place?
no. If it is to be, if any instructions to be given to the central bank, Samir, it should be done in terms of the provisions in the Monetary Law Act. The provision in the Monetary Law Act is that the Minister of Finance cannot issue general law specific instructions to central bank.
So you're saying the Prime Minister is wrong?
No, he can't. He can't.
He can't, or is he wrong?
I don't say he is wrong, but he can't in terms of the law.
But he said in Parliament. He
No,
said in
he-
Parliament.
yeah,
he
even
said,
then he can't.
I instructed.
No, he can't. I mean, that is because he wouldn't have been properly informed by the people.
Mr. Varnasurya, a lot of people in civil society, in the opposition, some even in the government, have been calling for the seizure of the profits that were made by Perpetual Treasuries Limited for criminal prosecutions. Just for our viewers to be aware, as an eminent lawyer, could you please tell us under which laws this could be prosecuted, what penalties there are, if any, and whether there is a legal premise for the seizure of the profits earned by Perpetual Treasuries?
Yeah, two different angles of prosecution. The report themselves have identified it. You see, we must look at it from the COPE report. The Committee on Public Enterprise primarily is looking at the public enterprise and the wrongs it has done. That's what Parliament has given it the power to do. Now, what's the public enterprise on this occasion? The central bank. The governor is a public officer dependent upon public funds, hopefully who has taken an oath of office like other citizens do. I don't know. There are questions about whether he was a public officer. That's something we'll have to deal with in come prosecution. That's one part. What you're now directing my attention to is in private law, commercial banking and finance. What can you do against Perpetual Securities or whoever it is that did this? And then the Aloysius and the name, other measurement. Now,
Mr. Varnasurya.
Sorry?
Perpetual Treasuries.
Perpetual Treasuries, yes, Treasury. Yeah, I don't know these individuals. So anyway, it appears some people know them more than I. In any event, now that Nadeem, you can in finance law, debentures, bonds, these are instruments in commercial banking and finance. You can trace proceeds of fraud. You can trace funds. There's a concept called tracing at law, where you can trace funds that have been fraudulently transacted into the hands of who it has gone to. Even if a third party buyer had purchased it or gained a profit without knowledge of the fraud, still if there's a fraud committed, that can be traced. Then that's at common law. Then unjust enrichment. There are so many principles upon which private entities can act. But once again I tell you, remember that its service anyway available, and that can be done even without a COPE report. You follow? COPE report's attention, we must focus on the public officer involved. Why did he act the way he acted? And look at the footnote and what are we doing about it?
Mr. Varnasurya, can I ask this? Again, you say the arms of the judiciary and the executive that are charged with law enforcement, they don't need to, or they're not required to wait for
Another vote?
official complaint or for a vote to be lodged.
Wait, now
What's the point of law enforcement if you have to wait
No, correct. You don't
to
have
start
to
enforcing the law?
Unfortunately, our laws, I don't know who made it, very archaic. Bribery Commission law also, as Keith, you have to wait for a complaint for it to ex mero motu. They cannot go after an individual until some information comes to them.
But what about the Attorney General?
But the information is now available, so now they don't have to wait.
And there are complaints available, and based on this
even
complaint,
today,
because-
I saw some parliamentarians going and lodging a complaint
Yeah.
directly against a honorable Prime Minister, saying that there is involvement. Now the Bribery Commission has a complaint. They do not need to wait for a further vote in the legislature. They can, if they wish. This is where the executive will be tested. This is where whether some of that the government that some of us made will be tested. Whether they will. The promise that they gave the people, that we put our life and limb at peril to get for this country, whether the executive will now take action and show the people it meant business when they said what they said, or are they equally corrupt as those we kicked out of power?
Mr. Tendakon,
Can I ask
are you
you a
of the same view, Mr. Tendakon, as of Mr. Varun Surya?
I think, I mean, but today I saw some of the ministers now is coming up with the same logic, saying that there must be a complaint come into that, and there is a procedure. The Attorney General has to, we have to forward this to the Attorney General, and so on. Now we are having a clear-cut case, and there are complaints going to that, to the bribery and corruption, and there are ministers like Mahinda Amaraveera who has made the complaint, and I'll tell you again, confirming that these complaints were well entertained. There were investigations happen, and these investigations are going into the very thorough levels, and according to the central bank officials, I mean, these investigations are going into the roots of the cause, and they have identified where are the issues are. The only issue, the previous, the present Bribery and Corruption Commission did not took the third step, which is going and filing the case, and that's where the case is now. And here the issue, now we are having another evidence, piece of paper down there. It's a concrete report with a very concrete recommendations here. So just act on that. The institutions, the institutions which was commissions created with the 19th Amendment is having a whole responsibility. Now it's the time to act, or otherwise the credibility of the whole this commission
Mr. Tendakon, now
losing out.
Mr. Tendakon, you're saying that this is the time to act. I agree with you. Does that mean when the former governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka comes to the country, the Immigration and Immigration Department has a role to play?
It's a very tricky question to answer. Maybe Krishmal can answer.
Yes, Mr.
This Arjun Mahendran he's still holding a Singaporean passport.
Mr. Varun Surya, what are your thoughts?
Now, we must first investigate.
Now you say there's a complaint. You say that the COPE has done their part. It's investigated at the Bribery Commission.
Certainly. Okay, if you listen to my answer, you get. If the man is a citizen of Sri Lanka, if he is dual, triple, or otherwise, I don't know. I have not seen his passport. If he is not a citizen of Sri Lanka, then certainly immigration authorities can play a role in it without ex mero motu, without any government. But if he is a citizen of Sri Lanka, remember, he has all the right to come back to his country unless there is an order from a competent court which has been communicated to the authorities saying that such and such a person is needed. Then upon his arrival, then perhaps, I think they take them to the trial zone, and then the authority takes them over. That's how it's done.
Mr. Varun Surya, such a procedure, to get that order from court, that procedure needs to be initiated by the Attorney General's Department.
Not necessarily by the Attorney General's Department. Bribery Commission themselves can go to the Magistrates Court.
But as a lawyer, do you feel that the Attorney General now has grounds to instruct the Controller General of Immigration and Immigration to apprehend this person when he returns to the island?
The Attorney General, I do not know right now whether the Attorney General can immediately go and get such an order to apprehend this person without some direction coming to the Attorney General, some complaint coming from. You see, usually how the Attorney General works is, unless if it's in a public law field like Supreme Court where we work, they are instructed by a certain department to appear for them. But in the lower courts, in Magistrates Court or prosecutions, the police need to refer the matter to the Attorney General, or if it's an indictable offence, then the Attorney General automatically comes in. So charges have to be framed now.
Mr. Varun Surya, let's keep the Attorney General for a side at the moment. Let's forget about him for the moment. Can the FCID do it?
Of course.
They can do it.
Of course, because the COPE report commissions all law enforcement authorities who are now in
It's very crystal clear. It is crystal clear.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Tendakon,
yes.
now we spoke about a fisherman from Hambegamuwa and a lady from Puthukudi. We don't need to go that far, no? Chaturanga from Colombo 15, for him 20,000 is a big amount.
Yes.
With all these committee reports coming forward, FCID, Bribery Commission, with whatever is going on, will I get my 20,000 back?
This is the challenge. How we going to get our 20,000 back is the issue for I think almost all the citizens, except few people who was writing the footnotes down there on the report. I think they are not worried about the 9 people who was writing the footnotes might not consider about it, might not care about it. But here, for the Sri Lankans as citizens, that is the fact. And this is the litmus test for the entities and the FCID, CID and the bribery and corruption, whether they are having enough teeth and whether they are having enough courage for that matter, or whether they are having enough commitment to eradicate the bribery and corruption.
Public servants or government servants?
Are they public servants or government servants? All these very vital issues will come into act.
Mr. Varnasri, I have a question for you. Is there any legal provision for the Prime Minister to take a leave of absence so that a full investigation can be carried out, because he is also party to that complaint made at the Bribery Commission?
I was waiting for someone to come with the question for us. You're spot on. As Honorable Prime Minister, whether he needs to take a leave of absence in this matter is questionable. But as the Minister in charge of which he himself has now assumed control of the central bank. Remember?
He's taken care.
Yes, because it was under the finance minister earlier. By gazette notification, he has taken the central bank, which is why in Parliament he said, see the democracy of this country, it is a matter coming under me, now I have opened it for investigation.
Good.
Now, if he has opened it up for investigation, and if that committee that he so proudly acclaims affinity to says that investigation needs to be carried out in that department, as the minister who is in charge of that subject, then surely when his name has been implicated, he now needs to make a decision. Am I going to make way for an independent inquiry by at least removing myself from that office that covers that area, or am I going to continue being in charge of it and then tell the people under me to investigate me?
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts on the second round. A quick answer to Chaturanga Haporachi, the young Chaturanga Haporachi, who's from Colombo 15. Chaturanga, it's as important as for you as an individual who's earning substantially something. There are individuals in the garment sector who are not even earning 16,000 rupees a day, who have to pay this 20,000 rupees. There are individuals in Hambegamu, as Sonali correctly pointed out, who probably not even is earning 5,000 rupees a month. For them, this 20,000 rupees is quite important.
Shamir, I'm sorry, 20,000 is important to all of us.
Could I just say, Shamir, that the 20,000 is as important as the 10 billion?
That is so. That's for sure.
So it's quite important as far as the figures are concerned. It's 11.2 billion rupees that we're talking about anywhere in Sri Lanka. If you are paying that money, you have to be concerned, because it's going out of your pocket. It's your money at the end of the day. When there are countries like UK, where you see the Prime Minister of the country resigning after losing a referendum. When you see, again, in London, when the Prime Ministerial candidate loses a poll, people like Gordon Brown, what happened? They leave. Then you have countries like Brazil. When there's an impeachment, there's leave of absence from the president herself, Dilma Rousseff. A cue for Sri Lanka as well. Now we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, we're talking about the bond scam and what is next. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the central bank bond scam and what is going to happen next. We are in conversation with four eminent personalities, Mr. Rusirpal Tennakon, Dr. W. A. Vijayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Attorney at Law, Mr. Krishmal Varanasurya, as well as Mr. Kirti Tennakon. Now let's start off the third round with Mr. Rusirpal Tennakon, who was also a banker as well as now a public interest activist. Mr. Tennakon, on the 10th of March 2015, under the instruction of the President, the Prime Minister appoints a three-member committee comprising of Mr. Gamini Pitipana, Mahesh Kalugampitiya as well as Chandimal Mendes. We are not in any way trying to criticize the COPE report that was out, and a yeoman service was rendered by JVP parliamentarian Sri Handunetti to ensure that a report is out and holding the necessary people responsible. However, why did not COPE take into account this report also in question, which says a forensic investigation needs to be held? Why? This is why people think that the COPE report in question is diluted. Yes,
I
the Prime
think my own concern is that this committee appointed by the Honorable Prime Minister, as he announced in the Parliament, was totally a fact-finding committee which he instigated, which he wanted, appointed for some reason or the other, where he has not been asked by anybody to appoint a committee of that nature. He decided who to be selected, he decided what the terms of references are, and he gave them the directions to submit a report. But if we recall, at that particular time, there was a better sort of focus on the issue coming from the President himself, requiring the authorities to go into it and investigate the matter. I think for us, today looking back, we can see that the appointment of this committee by the Prime Minister was a sidetracking of that committee or commission of investigation, which could have been properly done at that stage. There are two or three things arising of that committee. Number one is, the committee, they themselves stated that their terms of reference was a limited one, therefore they could not go into the details of the matter. They said that. And they said, even with the limitations of the terms of reference that were given to us, when we examined it, we found that this is a matter that involves large amounts of public money and some misdoings by some public authorities. It deserves to be examined further by a properly constituted authoritative body. Now, these were spelled out in the report. The report is a public document. My question is, what did the Prime Minister do after he got this report? Did he start that investigation? The matter was referred to a COPE committee in that Parliament, the first Parliament after January 8th, by the Speaker himself, referring it to a special committee. No one other than Honorable Chamal Rajapaksa as the Speaker. That was referred, and we know what happened to that committee report. On the day the report to be out was made to be published or tabled, the Parliament was dissolved.
Mr. Tennakoon, how interesting is this? The Prime Minister appoints the governor, the former governor of the central bank. He then appoints a committee headed by 3 UNP MPs. Then he names his representatives to the committee in question. You have MPs like Sujiva Senasinghe, Parliamentary Harsha De Silva, MP Ajit Pereira, so on and so forth. You have several UNP MPs as well. And then you have the Prime Minister talking on behalf of the governor in Parliament on several occasions. And you heard him now as well. Why is that the Prime Minister trying to defend the former governor of the central bank?
Not only before the reports were out, even after the reports of the so-called committees and the COPs were out, still the Prime Minister appears to be defending the governor.
Why
is that?
When we don't know. The question when it was raised in Parliament, where is Mahendran at the moment? He said, no, he came and met me 1 week ago and he went for a wedding.
So
Very light.
Is the Prime Minister the spokesperson of the former governor of the central bank?
I mean, they have been. It is no secret that they are very close friends.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusiripal Tennakoon, for your thoughts on the third round. We now move our attention to Mr. Krishmal Varanasuriya, attorney at law as well as the Joint Secretary of the People's Intellectual Assembly. I got it right, Mr. Varanasuriya?
Right.
Super. Mr. Varanasuriya, you said that it is time now to act. Law enforcement authorities should act. If there is a failure from the side of the law enforcement authorities to act, can the people act in place of the law enforcement authorities? I mean, to go and lodge a complaint in the Supreme Court or file a petition in the Supreme Court. What is that format?
Yeah. I think the answer to your question lies in the report itself, Sami. So I'm going to use the time that I have to quickly now. One, at page 46 of the report, it's in Sinhalese. They're finding fault the Auditor General's recommendation finding fault that disclosure, if you have a conflict of interest, relatives or whatever. Now I remember I was also part of a state bank for a few months on the board of a state bank. We had to fill up forms. We relatives, our wives' relatives, anyone that we had in the sector that we had disclosed. Now, why were those forms given? What if, and these are checked by the central bank itself, by a department that's in the central bank as to whether these people are fit enough to hold office in banks. Now, if this disclosure was made of the governor, the then governor, of his son-in-law's connection, why was that not acted upon? That's a question. Now that people can take action. At the end, I'll tell you how they can take action. Then, you look at another point in this report. They're saying, once again, Auditor General's recommendations. On page 48, number 1, the Auditor General has shown such and such amount and such amount has been lost. Then, in response to that, this footnote, there's a footnote report. Now, one footnote comes, it's very funny, Shamir. In the English translation would be, as to whether there was a connection between primary dealers and primary traders, Mahabank Adhipati Saha. So, between the governor of the bank and primary dealers, whether there was any connection that was sufficient enough, Pramanaatmaka Balapayama Kirim, that was sufficient enough to, on this bond issue, that they had no way to anavarana kirimata apahasui. They had no way to say, surely the man is his son-in-law. The man is his son-in-law. And footnotes are saying that although the Auditor General has held so, it appears to us that there was no real way for us to find out whether there was actually any connection between the governor and these dealers. He's a son-in-law. What else do you need?
I think, can I supplement something to...
You're taking Mr. Varnasury's time.
No, just a supplement.
With the permission of Mr. Varnasury.
With his permission, of course, he will give me. Now, this, they are talking about the son-in-law and the connection. Are we forgetting the fact that this son-in-law resigned from the position of this company on the assumption of duties by the governor? They knew who is to be appointed and what is going to happen thereafter. They were getting ready.
Then 3.8, footnote 3.8 of the main footnote. There are lots of footnotes. Sri Lanka Mahabank, sorry, but there was a, they say that the interactions between the central bank officers and the dealers could not be found because Durakatana Sangwada Patti Gatakara Notibim Nisa. Now, even when you and I call our little account in our bank, we get a message saying all these calls are going to be recorded for training and whatever. The central bank of this country, dealing in billions with dealers, don't have 100%. Now, a citizen of this country, the question now is, a citizen of this country needs to take this to, I believe, as lawyers we can't, Dokiti, we can't champion or ask people to go to court, but if, well, let me say, if speculative, if interested citizen, like the 2002-2003 era, when insurance, all these things were checked up, were to take this report and ask all these departments to find out what the flaws are, why did you not do your duty, I do not think any court, particularly the Supreme Court, will look very kindly at all these officers who have faulted in doing their duty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kushmal Varnasury, attorney at law, for your thoughts on the third round. We now move our attention to Dr. W. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Dr. Wijewardena, interestingly, now there is discussion about the son-in-law of the Governor of the Central Bank, perpetual treasuries. In fact, Arjun Joseph Aloysius resigned from the board of perpetual treasuries a few weeks ago, before the bond transaction really took place, before the governor of the central bank resumed office as the governor, Arjun Mahendran. And however, there is a perpetual holdings group as well, which is a holding company of the organization, and which in fact Arjun Joseph Aloysius has a lot of control as far as this organization is concerned. The holding arm, the company of this organization in question, the perpetual treasuries. Why isn't that? COPE has focused on perpetual treasuries. Is it because perpetual treasuries can go scot-free? They have not made a mistake? Is it the governor's problem alone? Who is really at fault?
Samir, now when it comes to regulating banking institutions, the concept accepted by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka as well as all other banks in the country is to regulate the holding company, because there are interconnected parties within a group, and they might actually, the bank might pass the responsibility to another institution in the group, and therefore they might hide the facts. So because of this reason, the fact that Mr. Arjun Aloysius has resigned from the director board of the Perpetual Treasuries does not mean that the central bank should stop investigating into him, because the central bank has to investigate into the holding company, all associate companies, all subsidiary companies and so forth. It's a group. So that is why in the leaked on-site examination report, the first para itself, they have named all the companies which are connected to the Perpetual Treasuries primary dealer, and therefore the regulatory arm is extended to the actions done by all other companies. And as a result, simply because you have resigned from the directorship of the Perpetual Treasury doesn't mean that you don't have any interest in the particular activity, and therefore it doesn't serve the purpose.
He probably can say that I was only doing business. I took money from a bank and lent it to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka wanted the money and I gave it.
Yeah, that's true. But
then
of course now what is at issue here is this conflict of interest. The conflict of interest doesn't go away simply because he has resigned from the board of directors of the Perpetual Treasury, because the central bank is looking at the whole group. So he is there.
So he cannot shy away from that response.
He cannot.
So why is it that the COPE has not really pointed the finger
that
at
of course I don't know,
Perpetual
because
Treasury?
the main reason is that the terms of reference of the COPE is to look at the public sector bodies and not the private sector organizations. So that may be the reason why they have not gone into that particular step, but of course they have made that recommendation. They have made the recommendation saying that the Perpetual Treasury should be fully investigated.
Do you still believe, Dr. Wijewardena, that a forensic investigation needs to be here?
Yeah, it has to be done, because Samir, now the Sunday Times carried a news story saying that the Perpetual Treasuries had been buying banks and finance companies. Because the Perpetual Treasuries cannot do that, because in terms of the central bank regulations, a primary dealer cannot own any banking institution. It can do only trading in the share market as a share broker, but not as a banker. So mainly because it appears that the profits would have been transferred to some subsidiary company which may have purchased all these shares in the market. So because of this reason, it is necessary to find out how the profits have been appropriated, who have got the profit, who have got the beneficial interest, and so forth.
But why is the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, under the stewardship of Dr. Indranil Kumaraswamy, silent on this?
No, they are doing it. In fact, in fairness to the central bank today and the governor of the central bank, Samir, there was this leak report, and immediately after that they had examined an interim report on the performance of the primary dealers, and they have found with concern, they have noted with concern the disparity, the sharp disparity in the performance and also some of the issues in the trading pattern, and they are waiting for the final report to be presented to the
whistleblower published a document in question.
Yeah,
the
of course, that's a
it?
different issue, because the whistleblower had actually done a national service in that respect, because it has got the monetary board of the central bank activated.
But isn't it the responsibility of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to get to know that
No, it
information
will do.
beforehand?
They will do that. They will do that, and we have to wait until the final report is submitted to the monetary board. And once the final report is submitted, then only we will be able to blame the monetary board or the government.
Do you think the Central Bank of Sri Lanka right now are doing the job?
They may be. I mean, they have to do that. I mean, I have full confidence in the technical staff in the central bank, for Samir, because they are actually independent, impartial and objective.
But Dr. Wijewardena, you have individuals who are riddled with corruption who are still serving as deputy governors of that
there are
banking
certain
authority.
individuals, there are
And then
certain
you're saying that
individuals,
you
but at
have
the same
full
time,
confidence of the technical team.
the
at
lower
end of the
level
day.
technical staff will do their job, and we'll have to wait until their report is submitted to the monetary board to find out what action the monetary board would take.
Thank you very much.
What is leaked could be treated. What is leaked could be treated as the Panama Papers of Sri Lanka.
With your permission, may I take 30 seconds to Dr.
I will have to. I will have to move to Mr. Tendulkar, and I'll come back to you during
the point will be lost. It is building up from what he just said.
I'll give you time after Mr. Tendulkar is over.
Then
For sure.
no worry.
Okay.
You can take
Mr. Keith Tendulkar, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Tendulkar, you have interesting remarks being made by individuals on your right. You have Mr. Krishmal Varanasuriya taking a firm stand and saying action needs to be taken. Now, you have the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank saying that it's important to understand that the Central Bank of Sri Lanka is doing their job right now. However, what happened in the past should be dealt with. You have Mr. Risiripala Tendulkar, who's hellbound and saying there's someone behind the bond transaction who is unforeseen. There's an unforeseen hand behind this transaction in question. It's not the governor of the central bank alone. Who must he be referring to? Who is this unforeseen hand behind this bond transaction? You had United National Party Chairman Malik Samaravikrama, who joined in the discussion on the 26th of February 2015 as a chairman of the UNP. What was his role? You had Ministers Ravi Karunayaka and Minister Kabir Hashim, and then you had the governor of the central bank. The question now is, why was now Minister, then Chairman of UNP, Malik Samaravikrama attending that meeting in question? Your time starts now.
I think I'd like to start with where Mr. Vijayawardena left. Perpetual treasuries, I mean, when you are going to investigate that particular path, is, I think definitely it will lead to another company called Perpetual Capitals, or it could lead it to the Perpetual Assets Management Company. And if we are going to investigate that two entities, that two companies registered with the company secretary for that matter, definitely will give a very concrete answer. Who are the initial beneficiaries? Who are the initial beneficiaries? Who are the people, two people who was getting the cash into their hands? And thereafter, it will lead to the question to the individuals you have mentioned. What's the role the Malik Samaravikrama, the minister, and Kabir Hashim, the minister, and the other so forth people getting involved, whose names are recorded with these documents now on the public domain. In the other hand, it's very important to know the specific role played with Arjuna Mahendran on
So
this
who must the
particular
COPE really investigate now? Is it
I think,
Minister Malik Samaravikrama?
the COPE has done its part. Now it's the FCID, CID, or the Bribery and Corruption Commission according to the
But you say that
law of
this
the
report in
land.
question is diluted.
It does not matter. Now we are having a very concrete evidence. As I said continuously in this show, now the Bribery and Corruption Commission has done an investigation. It is at the very end of the investigations. Just work on that. And
Minister Malik Samaravikrama could say, I was acting on behalf of the Prime Minister of the country.
Once this case is filed, when the indictment are served, I think definitely this part, the
But
rest
who
of
should
the
be
part of
investigated?
this.
Mr. Nikon, you're missing the point here. Who should be investigated? You say that the governor of the central bank should be...
Definitely, number one, the perpetual
Investigated.
treasuries has to be investigated.
Okay, who
and
else?
the asset management company has to be investigated.
Okay, that's perpetual treasuries.
And then
Okay.
the
Who
other
else?
people, the politicians, how and why
Who are the
these
politicians?
Malik, as you said, Malik Samaravikrama, Kabir Hashim, and the Prime Minister himself said that he was given instructions. Definitely, Prime Minister has to be investigated on this.
So in the event the COPE report suggests, or the investigation suggests that someone is wrong, what must they do?
It will be up to the courts to decide what must be done with them.
As a campaigner of good governance, where do you see this particular issue standing today in the mind frame of the people of Sri Lanka?
I think the perception of the people is very much on the spot, and some politicians got involved with this, including starting from Arjuna Mahendran, and hereafter it could lead up to the ministers and even the Prime Minister for that matter. So we need clear investigations to prove that, and this is something will be testing the judicial system of the country, the credibility for that matter on the system.
Mr. Nicol, one final question before I open the floor for questions from our journalists. Do you think the UNP on the 17th of August lost a number of seats
Definitely,
because
yes.
of the bond scam that took place in February?
Definitely it is. And it is a known fact that the people who put some sort of a trust on the good governance aspect, they had a doubt that is the present government, especially the UNPS, are going the same way which have done in 2003 for that matter, or will they continue the way Mahinda Rajapaksa and his family ruled
Thank you
the
very much,
country?
Mr. Keith Tennakoon. I in fact think that you are not in any way suggesting that this government is going to last only for 2 years. Are you
No one
suggesting
knows.
that?
No one knows.
Okay,
In
thank you very much.
2 years ago, no one thought at this particular junction that it will be toppled with, the 65 days. So it could happen, definitely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keith Tennakoon, for your thoughts as well. I open the floor for questions. Let's start off with the lady in the panel, Sonali.
Thank you, Shamir. Well, I'd like to first quote from this COPE report. It says on page 53, එකී අයථා කටයුතු හේතුවෙන් රජයට හා මහජනතාවට සිදුවී ඇති අලාභය හෝ පාඩුව එකී වගකිව යුතු පුද්ගලයන් හෝ ආයතනවලින් අයකරගත යුතු බව නිර්දේශ කරන අතර ඒ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අධිකරණමය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගත යුතු බව කාරක සභාව අවධාරණය කරයි. For the benefit of our viewers, let me very loosely translate it into necessary legal action should be taken against persons or institutions, entities responsible for misdoings resulting in loss damage to the state and general public. Mr. Krishmal Varnasuriya, you mentioned that COPE lacks teeth. So it can only give recommendations, but as to whether these recommendations are implemented, that's a different matter altogether. So where do we proceed from now, and is there a time limit for this?
Thank you very much, Sonali. At least what I was trying to intervene earlier on. I saw this. Now, the question posed to Vijayadana was, what is the present central bank doing about this? Now, if I were a carefully thinking citizen, I'd explore what the law has given me. Freedom of Information Act. Now, we have a constitutional right to freedom of information. Article 14 is amended. Now it's an act. I will write to the Information Office of Central Bank and ask, can you please tell me, the COPE report at page 53 says, the first quote you said about private individuals, the first quote is Mahabankuen Niladharina Ayatanayanta. What action have you taken against central bank officials and its officers? Then what action have you taken, second part that you read, Ayata Rajeta Mahajana Atvi Alabe, the loss caused to the republic, what action have you taken to recover that? Now, if a citizen were to ask this on the central bank, they have to answer. Why? Freedom of information. If they don't answer, then you know what to do. We can go to, any court. For that matter, you can go to the Supreme Court and say, my rights have been violated. Why? It's a fundamental right to information. You follow? From that, we can, as citizens, we can start an action if the other organs of government that are supposed to do something are not doing. I mean, that could be a good way to start it. Of course, additionally, Sonali, the executive arms of government, they don't need to wait for any further. The police, as you know, your lawyer, police, as you know, can act upon information that they have that the law has been violated. This is information. What better than legislative arm of government saying these frauds have been committed? Act upon it. Why are you waiting?
Day by day, Mr. Vanasuri, don't you agree if I say that day by day, when we keep on at it and we wait for investigations, COPE reports, this money seems to be disappearing day by day.
Exactly, and the long it takes, the earlier question of Sonali is not this time, the earlier one, remember that it's very unknown to the common people. You see, common people, see, tracing funds, these very, very intricate banking tools like bonds, debentures, syndicated loans, these are unknown to the example that she used, the common man. Which is why we need to start immediately civil society, I think, Kirti, needs to educate the public as to know this is not about some bond for 5.2 billion rupees that doesn't affect you. This is your money. That information must go to the public. And Chaturanga, as you say, this sort of thing, when it changes hands, that's called carouseling. In financial markets, foreign jurisdictions, they carousel the money around to such an extent that you can't trace the source of it. So we need to act immediately, and if the government is serious on it, we need to act, and if citizens of this country, as I say, are waking, they can start the actions without waiting for anyone.
Dr. Wijewardena, I'd like to draw your attention to something that happened in November last year. A government minister, a cabinet minister in Parliament stood up and defended a company that he was representing as a lawyer. And on the 9th of November, following opposition from his colleagues in cabinet, he stepped down, resigned his position as Minister of Law and Order and Prison Reforms. So we don't have to look far afield to Iceland or the UK or anywhere else for examples. We have an example from just last year in Sri Lanka. Given the gravity of this situation as compared with the situation faced by that minister, do you think that it is appropriate for the Prime Minister at this juncture to step down?
Well, of course, it's up to the Prime Minister to decide, because Prime Minister has been known as a person who has campaigned for democracy. He's a champion of democracy. He's a person who upholds democracy. And given all these qualifications behind him, it's up to him to decide what he should do now. I mean, we cannot say what he should do. It's up to him. If I were him, I would have stepped down.
Mr. Tennakoon, as an anti-corruption activist, can you tell me now, we had the former cabinet minister Tilak Marapana, who resigned from his position after opposition from within the cabinet itself. As an anti-corruption activist, what's your take on this? Do you think that the Prime Minister should resign? Should step down?
As an academic, I was studying the history of the UNP and the behavior of the UNP for such a long time. And my understanding, the way the present Prime Minister is behaving, the same way he deals with the UNP itself. We have seen that he is appointing the working committee members, and he was trying to get around with them and find something, and then once again when the elections or the other issues are coming from in the party itself inside, of course he tried to cover it up, having that getting the people who was appointed by him to protect him. I think that particular logic, when it comes to the governance of a country, won't apply. I think that will give a very concrete answer to your question. We cannot play around. We are having a very open country now. There is a certain openness, and the people, the entities are working in to some extent, even though it is not up to the expectation of the civil society for that matter. Now, just think of, 10 years ago, maybe but 5 years ago, these sort of investigations, even getting a COP report of this sort is not possible. Now the UNPS have, even the UNP parliamentarians has signed this particular COP report. So that particular logic, that particular scenario is not going to work. We are having we are having openness in our society.
Quickly, Mr. Tennakoon, yes or no? Do you think that the Prime Minister needs to step down?
Definitely yes. The allegations are coming against him. I think
Mr.
it's the right time to step down.
I'll ask you the same question. If Tilak Marapana could resign when the whole issue with Avantgarde came up in November 2015, do you think that the Prime Minister now should also
may I
resign?
interject and ask my question, because it's related to yours, but there's a little bit before
Add-on,
that.
an addendum.
Indeed. Thank you for that. Mr. Rusripala, Dr. Wijewardena referred to our Prime Minister in rather glowing terms about his commitment to democracy and so on. In that case, what is your view? If the Prime Minister is so committed to democracy, do you think that after his statement in Parliament, claiming responsibility, defending his hand-picked choice of governor, what should he do?
I think I look at it in a different way, practically, pragmatically.
Perhaps it will help you
Yes.
if I mention to you that Mahinda Rajapaksa, before he became Prime Minister or President, was a champion human rights activist, only to change after assuming power.
Yes, yes. I think he will look at it in a more pragmatic way. Prime Minister has so many more important things to do. The megapolis, the 1 million jobs, all undone things, so many things that he has promised to this country. So will he not be more interested in delivering those than resigning and going back and sleeping? I think he will stay back. He will stay on. And he will justify it by saying, I have more important things to do, which I have promised, which the country is expecting from me.
Or
Mr.
is it the
Yes.
fear of losing power that is keeping him in office?
No, it's not a question of losing power. He will say, I have to, now see the budget is coming. We have no time to discuss this report. The budget is more important. I am telling you the practicalities involved. And there will be a statement one day, I have more important things to do for this country and the people under
So it's-
democracy. Therefore, I have decided to remain, hang on and deliver those.
But with your reply, it's looking increasingly unlikely that Chaturanga from Colombo 15 isn't going to get his 20,000 back.
Unlikely.
Thank you.
Mr. Usripala, now I want to draw the attention of our viewers to another problem with regard to the COPE committee. There were, or the central bank bond issue for that matter, there was a report on the transaction that took place in February 2015 by a 3-member committee appointed by the Prime Minister. Then there was an interim report on the COPE, which the Parliament was dissolved on the date it was supposed to be presented.
Yes.
Then there is this report that came out very recently.
Yes.
But this is the only report that contains the details of the second bond issue that happened in 2016, am I correct?
Yes.
But we don't seem to be giving that bond issue much attention like we did for the 2015 one. Why so?
I think we were discussing this question of the Prime Minister having to resign or decide on that basis. This is a count which is more applicable to that subject because it is the Prime Minister who allowed as the minister in charge of this subject for this person, the governor, to continue after the first bond issue, enabling him to get involved in the second bond transaction. That is a gross dereliction of duty which cost the country even more than the first bond issue. Therefore, if one has a conscience, that is sufficient for that conscience to play the role and decide.
The COPE committee report that has been presented now, the recommendations speak of avoiding recurrence. What can be done to do this? Is it the governor of this former governor of the central bank being removed from his position enough to avoid a recurrence or this from happening again?
No, I think there are sufficient recommendations in this report. As far as that is concerned, I am very happy that they have addressed very carefully how the future should be taken care of. That there is sufficient cover. But the responsibility that is devolving on the governor of the central bank, the former governor, for having committed these grave mistakes which cost the country so much, he has to pay for it.
So what needs to
He
be
has to be
understood-
penalized for it.
What needs to be understood correctly is the fact that this is the first time, in fact, that the finance minister does not hold the power over the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Wijewardena. That is why the finger is pointed to the Prime Minister to respond and take action accordingly. In your opinion, what must be the format in which the finance minister's role comes into play in a situation like this, Dr. Wijewardena? Where do you see the Minister of Finance
think,
pitching in and doing his role and doing his job?
Actually, it was a mistake that the central bank and other banks had been listed outside the Ministry of Finance. And what the government can do now is to bring it back under the Ministry of Finance, so that the Minister of Finance is responsible for whatever that is happening in the central bank. So it's a matter of changing back to the former system.
Is this a ploy to rob money from the people, to take it away from the Minister of Finance?
No, I mean it doesn't happen that way, because the objective of taking central bank and other institutions away from the Ministry of Finance was to enable the Minister of Finance to concentrate on the budget.
Budget.
Only the budget, because only the income generating agencies have been listed under the Ministry of Finance. All other agencies which are in the Ministry of Finance have been taken away from the Ministry of Finance and assigned to various other ministers.
But doctor, this finance minister went to address the primary dealers in the central bank after this debacle.
No, he can't.
He did that, no?
He can't.
Instead of the prime minister, when the primary dealers made a hell of a furor about what happened and that they should be given a forum, they were given 1 month later, and who addressed it? The Minister of Finance.
No, he can't because
he did not address it, he jumped on them.
Because
they were scared to come up with their problems, come up with their issues. This is history.
Mr. Kirti Tennakon, one final question to you.
Yeah.
Now, since 20 million of us can't go into parliament, we using our franchise, our vote, we elect 225 parliamentarians to represent us in parliament, make decisions on behalf of us for the betterment of the country. However, once they are in that position of power, what they do is they sort of gain an air of invincibility almost. Should they have this air of invincibility about them? We haven't put them there to amass wealth or to drive in SUVs and claim 500,000 a month for all sorts of allowances. The public's money is affected here. We are the ones who are being impacted adversely. But once elected, they have this air of invincibility. What are your thoughts? And should they be invincible?
As an anti-corruption activist, this is something we have very concerned during the last 20 to 25, last 20 months or so. Basically, the government, which became the people's choice in January 8, has made very concrete promises, and the law enforcement is happening to some extent, but when it comes to the fight against corruption, we don't see any big progress. Number one, there's no new laws introduced in related to fight against corruption. The other factors, the investigations on these corruption issues which has happened during the Rajapaksa regime has not come up. There are very big deals. Hechin is not very much investigated, and then the big MIG deal and the other concern factors. The Air Lanka is not investigated yet, and there are, the list goes on and on. So that investigation part has not done, and we are having each and every day at the Attorney General's department, their files are filing on and on. So the basic hope, the big hope on the agenda of the January 8th is it's shaken to some extent. In addition to that, now the new cases against this government is coming up continuously. I mean, we can name some of them. It's the bond issue is only one of them, and we are having some Pajeros taken away, duty concessions given on beer. There are Lanka Coal Company deal, which was, I mean, talk of the town these days. Now, where and when we are going to investigate on these issues, and above all of these issues, the reformist agenda of the country is undershaken now. I mean, whether or not we can go forward with the electoral reforms or the constitutional reforms for that matter is a very big question mark now. So we are losing our patience on this.
Yes, Ron, please go
Mr.
ahead.
Valsurya, yesterday, Iceland's Prime Minister announced that he would resign as the insurgent anti-establishment pirate party capitalized on a wave of anger over corruption. Now, my earlier question to Mr. Tennakon was, Should our parliamentarians have an air of invincibility about them? Should they?
They appear to forget, Sonali, that they are merely servants. They are nothing, in my opinion, nothing but servants, public servants. We pay them, Pajeros are paid for, breakfast in parliament is paid for. Of course, they recently changed it to corn beef and cereal and all that we pay for. Right? Servants, drivers are we paid for that. So they are our servants. But when they go on the road shooting the air and dust into our hands and pushing us off into the curb also like those days with the siren waving, I do not know to the public who appears to be the servant and who appears to be the master. The people of this country, Sonali, need to realize we need to get ourselves beyond this master-servant mentality, from inviting the politician from everything from your child's birthday to his wedding, and when you die also you want a politician to come and make some speech somewhere, beyond death also. So we need to get ourselves beyond stardom in politics. Politics is a very boring, somewhere you go to parliament, sit together, discuss policy and see how we can take this country forward. But we have put cricket stars, superstars, singing stars, television stars in there. And we have made stardom out of politics. And therefore the entire thing is lopsided. So like you say, the master has become the servant has become the master. Now we need to correct it. The only people who can correct it are those people that rose up with us, Kirti, on the 8th of January and made that change in this country. And I'm inviting those people who are watching out there tonight, get together to make that change and put the politicians back to where they ought to be.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your questions as well as your thoughts on the first round. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. What's next as far as the COPE report is concerned? All this and more after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. The final round. We start off with Mr. Kirti Tennakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Mr. Tennakon, many Colombo-based parliamentarians who said that they have a pain towards the people's aspirations. They want to address the people's problems. Started batting with the governor of the central bank suddenly, all of a sudden. You wonder why. You wonder whether they're doing their part. What is your message to the people of Sri Lanka who elected parliamentarians who are not standing with the people at this juncture?
I think, I was shocked by the way the behavior of the parliamentarians like Ajit P. Pereira, Sujiva Senasinghe and Dr. Harsha. It's unbelievable. They try to cover it up, and we saw that the people understand this, their position very well. And we didn't look for the parliamentarians, and the Colombo-based people did not elect their representatives on this basis. We thought that they will use their intellectual capacities to get something positive out of that, and unfortunately that was not happen. And we saw that the people like Sujiva Senasinghe went out and requesting in the lobby that the people, the media who reported about this COPE report has to get into the command of the parliament privileges, which was shocking to us. And the issue here now, the people of the country they have to come out and say, this is not what we looked from you. And if we are not putting pressure on these parliamentarians, we cannot expect anything. And furthermore, I think we had a very big fight. We had a very continuous fight towards some sort of a justice when it comes to these issues, especially on the bond issue. And it will keep on like the very concerned factors like the Lanka Coal Company furthermore. I think standing up and putting pressure, talking about that, openly discussing and show that we are getting frustrated about the way you behave is a very concrete message to the parliamentarians, and it will at the same time apply some pressure on the judiciary and the executive presidency for that matter to make decisions, to concern about the people and to work on too impressed with the promises which they have made during the election time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirtan Nakoan, for your thoughts in the final round. I now move my attention to Dr. W. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. Dr. Wijewardena, what can the Central Bank of Sri Lanka do right now? You have a man who the Corp says is responsible for the bond transaction in question, which took place on the 27th of February 2015. What is the next step? Where must Sri Lanka now head?
Next step, Samir, is that there are lots of recommendations in the COP report, not only in the main report but also in the footnotes, which are of concern to Central Bank. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank should immediately start investigations into all these allegations made against the employees of the Central Bank, the people who had done something improper within the Central Bank, then the matters relating to perpetual treasuries, because it says that the perpetual treasuries has defrauded the country. So all these matters have to be investigated by the Central Bank on a priority basis, and it has to come out with a report to the nation, because otherwise what would happen is the people will have already lost their faith in the Central Bank, and they will continue to lose their faith in the Central Bank if the Central Bank doesn't do that.
How do you think the country is now moving forward to attract foreign direct investments? In a situation like this, do you think that the foreigners who want to invest in Sri Lanka would come and invest, given the circumstances
this is a serious blow to Sri Lanka's credibility, Samir, because the foreigners might feel that Sri Lanka is a country where people can rob money from other people and also escape with impunity. Therefore, they don't have any trust in placing their investments back in Sri Lanka. So because of this reason, it's a severe blow, and we will be losing in our in all the indices relating to good governance, relating to ease of doing business, relating to public finance and so forth, and which is not a good thing for a country like Sri Lanka, because we have to depend on outsiders today to get the necessary investments, to get the necessary savings, to fill the budget, to finance the import program and so forth. So it's a serious flaw.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Wijewardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. I now move my attention to Attorney at Law Krishmal Varanasuria, Joint Secretary of the People's Intellectual Assembly. Attorney at Law, Mr. Varanasuria, interestingly, before the 27th of February 2015, when someone said Bond, they only knew about James Bond. The very famous Bond series, that's all what the people knew in Sri Lanka when it came to the Bond. Now you have the former governor of the Central Bank who has done a quick Bond move. He's now in Singapore. That's what people know and people hear at the moment. In your opinion, what should be the concrete step that the law enforcement authorities, the President, the Prime Minister should do now? You have the COPE report. You don't want James Bond, the Mr. Bond man, missing in action. 007, MIA. Yes, the time starts now.
Yes, Amir, thank you for bowling that ball to me. This is an acid test, Shamir, as you say. This is the litmus test for this government that common people of this country formed on the 8th of January in 2015. That government, although politicians would like to think so, didn't just come there. If I run my mind back, the police barrels, the tear gas canisters were faced in 2010 when the 18th Amendment, draconian law, that gave an unending term to a president who wanted to live forever, that was challenged. People like Lasantha lost their lives. I remember the then General, now Field Marshal Fonseca, was court-martialed, imprisoned. All these events led up to that 8th January silent revolution of the people. And now, as you say, 007 has vanished. So, this is the test for this government that the people formed on the 8th of January. Remember, those people are watching you. And my challenge to all of you who presently hold office, whether they be in the executive, legislative or judicial arms of government, is that the power of this country, Article 3 of the Constitution, as I always say, lies in the people. It's inalienable. It's our sovereign power that you are exercising in whatever capacity. Now the people are watching you. There is a report that says these steps should be taken. You are the government that we put in place. That extended in August 2015 to a temporary custodians of our sovereign power. Now, we are watching to see whether that government that we elected and put in place to exercise our sovereign power, remember, as temporary custodians. The Mahavansa says that, "O great king, you are nothing but a custodian of this power. The birds and the beasts and everything belongs to the country and its people. We the people are watching you to see whether you are going to exercise that power on our behalf or to serve your own interests. We will watch."
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law, Mr. Krishmal Varanasuria. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon, who is a public interest activist. Ms. Thennakoon, I pose a question to you from a viewer. What's next? Is it Yamapalanaya or Yahapalanaya? Your time starts now.
Yeah. I think before I answer that question, I want to mention something about, in concluding the Scope Committee report. We see certain very important and very serious references in this Scope Committee report, which cannot be just bypassed. In the interest of the viewers and also in public interest, I would like to quote just one or two examples. Now, this
very quickly, Mr.
This thing called the footnote, which I believe is a dissenting note. I mean, that's essentially that. So, these footnotes, I think, are designed to give a completely wrong picture about the whole thing. But fortunately, I mean, the credit should go to the chairman of the Scope Committee. He has been able to manage these footnote guys also to come and contribute to the main report. They have already consented and signed the main report. So therefore the footnotes will go as mere observations by these people. Whether they will be regarded as anything serious is a matter to be yet to be seen, and in what forums. Here there in one place they say, මෙම මහ බැංකු නිලධාරීන් විසින් මෙම ප්‍රශ්නගත වෙන්දේසිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඊට කලින් දිනේදී ප්‍රාථමික ගනුදෙනුකරුවන්ට දුරකථනයෙන් දැනුම් දී බිලියන 10ක් ගන්න කැමතිදයි ඇසුවා. Now Shamir, it is to you who the governor of the central bank told that he made a mistake in not informing the primary dealers about the 10 billion in advance. You have it on record. It is on record in the evidence in the Scope Committee. They say that they never informed about a 10 billion requirement. They only announced 1 billion. Here this footnote, so-called footnote, says that they were informed. It's so therefore there are diabolical misrepresentations in these footnotes. And there is another thing. We heard in Parliament the Prime Minister saying, this matter has to be decided by the Parliament now. Krishmal, I think, mentioned this. Parliament has nothing more to do in this. It is because the entire Parliament cannot go into a subject like this that they appointed a subcommittee called the Scope Committee and then they went into it. Again, if it goes back to the Parliament, they are just pushing the ball from this end to the other end. That is all.
The question of the viewer, Mr. Thennakoon, Yamapalanaya or Yahapalanaya, what is next?
I think we are leading towards Yamapalanaya from Yahapalanaya.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusiripala Thennakoon, for your thoughts. Thank you very much, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, for coming here tonight as well and expressing your thoughts. A special thank you to Mr. Thennakoon as well as Dr. Vijayawardena for being with us and being very vocal on the bond scam over the last few months. To be very precise, approximately around 7.5 months. Thank you very much, Attorney at Law, Mr. Krishmal Varanasuria, for joining us this evening with your thoughts, and also Mr. Kiri Thennakoon for joining us this evening. When we had you, Mr. Varanasuria, on Friday on Sirsa TV, I was wondering, which side are you betting for? But it's abundantly clear now that you also envisage for a better country, for a better future, for our future generations in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Nadine, for joining us. Thank you very much, Sonali, for joining us, Attorney at Law in working with us as an attorney at law. Thank you very much, Chaturanga, for joining us this evening. And then, of course, for us, am I to call you the bond man? I'm not. 007 is out of the country. MIA, in the words, if I may use, from the Bond movie itself, missing in action. Tomorrow morning, who's our guest on Newsline?
The very eminent legal personality, senior man, Gomin Dayasri, will be joining us in the morning.
And what would be discussed tomorrow morning for us?
The way forward. We've come a long way, 18 months nearly. The network has given it all. We have expended several hours of airtime, invaluable airtime, all in the pursuit of the people's interests. And the battle's just started. We need to recover the money on behalf of the people.
The battle just started. It's time that we recover the money and hold those responsible and bring those responsible to book. I leave it tonight with a quote, as I always do. Corruption is worse than prostitution. The latter might endanger the morals of an individual. The former invariably endangers the morals of the entire country. Take care and good night.